Hey guys, this is Ryan with Singular Motorsports, and we just released our Fender louver kit for the NA and NB generation Mazda Miata. And this video is going to just kind of be a rundown on what to expect when you get the kit and go to install it. There's a few things that I think are handy to know and kind of be aware of as you get into it, and it's a lot easier to show that stuff in a video with the visuals and everything than to try to read it on a sheet of paper. The kits will come with a little sheet that do have those tips and sort of pointers written out on it, but this video will probably turn out to be a lot more useful for everyone. This isn't going to be a start to finish installation video, but just going to kind of go over everything that you should expect. And behind me, this Fender is actually off of my car, the Hyper Miata. And this is the prototype set of louvers that I ran in that car for a couple of years in testing prior to releasing the kit that you can now purchase and install in your own car. So this serves as a perfect sort of example for me to use as I talk about it. You'll notice that it's missing the rear portion of the fender. This car had large vented sections in the back of the fender as well, so it actually had everything was pushed in behind the front tire. But the fender louvers ended up proving to be the most effective thing to evacuate air out of the wheel well and reduce the pressure that creates lift up in the top portion. So they ended up being really effective and I think very valuable to people who want to run them. So what you're going to get in the kit is going to be a pair of louvers. You're also going to get a hardware packet. This is going to have 5 30-seconds rivets, which you can install with just a standard rivet gun. Harbor Freight sells them for super cheap. You can also get, I've got a fancy pneumatic one that's a lot of fun to use and makes things easy, but if you're not doing rivets all the time, just get the little handheld one. It's going to do fine. It also comes with rubber trim, which you can use. If it's not installed on this, I like to cut my holes for the louvers, and then the next step is then, of course, you wrap the livery onto the car with vinyl, and so I just wrap all the way up to the edge, so you get a nice clean edge. But the rubber trim is your alternative. If you have some little mistakes, some of the edges are rough, you didn't get a perfect radius somewhere, or if you're not going to repaint it or wrap it with vinyl afterwards, you can just use that edge trim, and the trim just goes over the lip where you've cut, and you can just run it all the way around the perimeter of the hole, and it gives it a nice finished appearance. The third thing that you're going to get is also a tube here. This tube has your template. So the template is very important. It shows you where to place the louvers so that you get your placement right. There's no guesswork. And it's also going to show you where to cut and where to drill your holes. So there's that sheet of paper I was talking about that explains some stuff, but you're watching the video, so this will be even more useful. These are your templates. So there's a left and a right, and since we're dealing with the right side fender here, I'll use this one. Now, just a few things to notice on here. First of all, and let me see if you can see this, there's going to be a line at the back of the sticker and an arrow, and it'll have 2 measurements. The dimensions of the NA and NB fender are slightly different. I did work out a design that actually fits both NA and NB fenders very nicely, so it's the same kit that you get regardless of which generation you have. But because the overall dimensions of the fender are slightly different, to get that placement right, those measurements for the placement have to be a little different. So you've got 20 inches for the NA and 19 inches for the NB. Now this is an NA fender, so we'll go with the NA. And then the other thing, hopefully you can see here, is that there's a top edge to the sticker, and then there's another piece of vinyl up here with another top edge. And we've got that marked NA to that edge and NB to that edge. Now that top edge there, you are going to align with the top edge of the fender. So as you're placing this, you're going to be placing it kind of start at the top here, get that lined up, and then you'll wrap it down onto the fender. And again, the NB fender is a slightly different shape than the NA fender, and so that provides you with 2 different lines. Just pay attention to the line that's appropriate for the generation that you have. Since this is an NA, I would match this top line that the NA points to, I would match that with the top of this fender. So I'd line it up there and then wrap it down. Now, that's going to be your first measurement or your first alignment, and then that measurement that's on the sticker that points to the back is going to be your second thing that you will use to get your alignment right. Now, let me go grab a measuring tape just so that I can demonstrate, and there's no question about what we're talking about. So the measurement is going to go to the very rearmost point of the fender. And that just makes kind of an easy reference point, because you can take a measuring tape and you can put the lip right over that corner, and there's really no question of if you're on the right spot. That's, you know, the fender doesn't go any further than that. That's where you're measuring from. So on the NA fender, I will be measuring 20 inches, and so 20 inches is right here. So 20 inches is where that edge of the template that arrow is pointing to, that's where I want that to be. I want that edge to be 20 inches to the end, at the back edge of the fender. The NB fender has a similar point at the back corner of it, and you'll measure 19 inches as the template says. So with that, placement of this template should be pretty good, should be pretty easy. That tells you exactly how to align it this way, gives you the height that way, and gives you the placement this way. And that really just locks in the positioning. You'll have this curve will line up nicely with the wheel arch, and then you're ready to, what I do is I use some painter's tape, and I'll actually mark, hey, we're losing it. I've got a little temporary stand here to hold it up. There we go. I'll use some painter's tape and just put the tape butted up to the edge of this this backing paper here, so that then when I remove this, I've got some reference points, and then I can take the backing paper off of this, and on my transfer tape, with my transfer tape and my template decal, I can align it with the painter's tape marks that I made, and then apply it like you would basically any large decal. A squeegee helps. Keep in mind, this is a three-dimensionally curved piece of bodywork. It's got a little bit of curvature this way. It's obviously curved this way. This is a two-dimensional flat template. It's not going to conform to the 3D shape perfectly. You are going to get some wrinkles and some bubbles and everything, and that's okay. This template is temporary. This is just showing you where to cut, and then you take it off anyways. So as long as you get it reasonably placed well and try to minimize the wrinkles, you're going to be fine. So don't worry if it's got some wrinkles and stuff and it doesn't look perfect, because it's not going to stay on the car. The next thing to know about the template is that there are only 2 holes shown for you. There's of course more holes where you're going to put rivets. There's a reason for only providing 2 holes. Some people think that we forgot them because there aren't, or we're missing most of the holes, but the reason for providing just a couple as a starting reference is that you want to drill those holes first, and then you're actually going to start forming the physical louvers themselves. I'll hold the right side one here. Once these are fully formed to match up nicely with the shape of the fender, then you're going to put a rivet as a placeholder in both of those holes that you have all the way through the fender and the louver piece. And then you will use this, keep in mind with these louvers, they're designed to install from the underside. They don't go on the top. So you'll have the fender flipped over. You'll put this in from the underside, and you'll use the holes in the louver itself as basically your drilling guide for the rest of your holes. We set it up that way because if we give you all of the holes in this template, as I said, that 2-dimensional template isn't going to conform to this 3-dimensional shape perfectly. So what you'd find if I gave you all of the holes in that template is that you'd drill all the holes, and then you'd line this thing up, and then the holes would be off a little bit. The top holes wouldn't be aligned with the bottom holes perfectly, and then you'd be frustrated and you've got to drill new holes, and then you've got some holes that are mess ups. We don't want that to happen. So this is your final template for where to drill your, especially your bottom holes, because those are going to align a little bit. It's a little hard to figure out where those are going to be any other way than just taking this and holding it up in there and drilling right where these holes in the aluminum piece are. So that's the reason for that. Now, the louvers, as you get them, as they ship, are mostly flat. Unlike all of the other louver kits that we ship that actually are 100% flat, these do have one bend already done. If you're able to see it, hopefully it focuses, but this top flange, the flat one that goes on the top side here, does already have a bend all the way along here, and it's actually forgetting, it's 15 or 20 degrees. That is the one bend that, in my opinion, was going to be very difficult for people to replicate at home, because it has to be, you're bending this whole length, this wide length at one time. And so we took care of that for you. It didn't really affect the ease of shipping because it really doesn't make the louver any taller. So we already took care of that. Your louver isn't damaged. If you take it out and you go, hang on, this is already bent. It's not damaged, that was intentional. You're gonna start with bending all of the fins to approximately 45 degrees. Don't worry, you can tweak their final angle later. The main thing is don't go bending them all the way to 90 and then back. It is aluminum. If you just keep going at it, you will eventually break a fin off. But if you just bend them nice and slowly to about 45, they will last for years. We haven't had any issues with that, except for extreme cases where somebody's bends them all the wrong way. For example, they take the right side and they bend them all as if it's the left side, and now you've got to bend them all the way 90 degrees back to get it back the other direction, and by then they've gotten a little weak. So make sure you look at which side you're bending prior to starting, and you shouldn't have any issues. So you're going to bend all your fins to about 45 degrees, and then this is where it just gets, if you've, by the way, if you've installed our hood louver kit, then this will be pretty straightforward for you. I would say that if the hood louver kit is like a 4 out of 10 in terms of installation difficulty, then these are maybe a 5 out of 10. They're just a hair more difficult than a hood louver kit or something that goes into a flat surface or relatively flat surface like a hood. Because you have more curvature here, there's a little more tweaking needed. So after you have your fins bent, then you're going to need to tweak this lower flange down so that when this gets placed in here, the lower flange aligns nicely with this surface and your top flange is aligning nicely with that surface. And the angle of the fins kind of ends up being an average between the two. So the easiest way to do that is a simple set of channel lock pliers. Pretty much anybody's got these, and you're just going to put the pliers right on the edge and just work your way along in small increments to just bend that flange down. You can put a little bit of tape on the jaws of the pliers to help not mar this, but keep in mind that this flange, because these install from the underside, you will not see this flange. You're only going to see the fins after everything is installed. So you really don't need to worry about too much about little scratches on the flange. That won't matter visually once everything's installed. But you're just going to work along, get a little bit of curvature to this whole side here. Keep checking with test fit it underneath the fender, in the hole, and just work slowly, creep up on it. You don't want to just crank on the thing and then put it in and realize you went too far. Again, just like the fins, you don't want to just keep bending aluminum back and forth. So do small adjustments, working slowly across and in small increments, and you'll creep up on it and get it looking good. There is actually a little bit of curvature to the whole thing this way as well. So sort of once I've got the flange angles right or close, the last thing that I'm going to do is kind of take the whole thing, and sometimes I'll sort of put like one edge against my stomach and like a hand in the middle and a hand on the top, and kind of just try to start to kind of give it a little bit of curvature this way, just a little bit, because you'll see that when you set it in, while it's straight, when you set it in here, it's going to contact at the corners and still be a little low, a little off of the backside of the fender in the middle. So it just needs a little bit of curvature, but this is stuff that you can adjust with your hands basically and just kind of finesse it into shape. And that's the only thing that's a little more difficult than a hood louver kit install, because those are going into a relatively flat surface. You don't have to tweak the angles quite as much. Now here's a one of the prototypes, one of the early revisions. And this one, I was working through all the bending and everything, and you can kind of see that curvature if you look at it. And that's just all done mostly by hand, maybe a little bit of help with the pliers, but that's kind of the curve that you end up getting. This is angled down a little bit, and then you just get that curve into there. This side has a little bit of a curve, but it's mostly flat on top. It just needs a little bit. But that's essentially what you end up with for the shape when you're done. But like I said, just do it in small increments and you'll get there pretty quickly. Now for most of you who are just getting the standard Fender louver kit, that's going to be it. Once you've got the louver pieces fully formed and done all your test fitting and everything looks nice and lines up, you're going to put your rubber trim in. If you're using it. If you're wrapping with vinyl or something, you might not need to, but most people will be using the rubber trim. So you'll put the rubber trim in, and then you'll put the louver in place, and then you'll put all your rivets in. And the rivets will kind of suck the Fender louver up to the Fender surface. So if you have small gaps, it's not perfectly formed, it will still end up conforming to the Fender in the end. Now, some of you might need what we're calling the GLTC covers, and that's going to be something that's offered as an optional add-on for the Fender louvers when you're ordering it. Those are going to look like this, and you'd get a pair of them. Now, these covers are for guys who are running in Grid Life Touring Cup, or possibly some other series where they specifically restrict the opening area allowed for Fender louvers. And so these, I don't remember the exact square inches off the top of my head. It'll be published on the website, of course. But these are designed to cover the rear section and choke that down to exactly the opening area that GLTC requires, or just a hair under it, so that to make sure that you're compliant and you don't run into any issues. These ship flat, just like the louvers. They are made out of fairly thin aluminum so that they don't take a whole lot of work to shape. This is the same one, which I shaped basically just bending it over my leg and then test fitting and then bending it, just getting the curvature right. It took me maybe 5 minutes. So you'll do the bending yourself. Now the reason, and this is actually a left side, so I can't show you exactly on the right side fender that I've got here, but you can picture how it would install. It basically wraps over there. And the reason that we did the covers like this, instead of just doing a different set of louvers that are GLTC sized, is that a lot of guys are running NASA, GLTC, regular track days, all kinds of stuff. They're not just running in one series. And so when you're not running in that particular series, you want to be able to unbolt this and get the full benefits of the full-size louvers. So this is designed to be something that you can bolt on and off and remove. So what you'll be getting along with the cover piece is you will also get 6 nuts and bolts, and you'll use those instead of the rivets in the 6 rear locations. That way this is something that can be unbolted or bolted on, and just can go on and off. So you won't use the rivets in those positions. And similar to how the template, the vinyl template, doesn't give you all of the holes, this will only be drilled at the top. So you'll align that with the 3 top holes once you've got this nicely formed, so it covers those. And then wherever this lands relative to the rear or the bottom holes, you'll then use your existing holes to align and drill the 3 bottom holes. That way you know that the holes get placed correctly instead of potentially ending up with the holes slightly off and then you're frustrated. That's about everything that I can think of. I think that will equip you pretty well with having a straightforward install and not running into too many issues. But as always, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to help if you run into any sort of question marks or anything like that, and always love to get everybody's feedback. You can reach out, go to singularmotorsports.com, or the email is support@singularmotorsports.com. Have a great day.